Tinesh Tembo, a renowned philanthropist who seemingly has it all cross his paths with a mysterious young woman whose words leave him stunned. But nothing prepares him for the revelation her mother makes on her deathbed, a truth far more shocking. Join us as we unravel a story filled with hidden truths and unexpected turns. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay with us on this journey.
In Lusaka, where steel towers pierce the sky and the elite rise above the dust, a man stepped out of his armored SUV into the glowing foyer of his penthouse. His name was Tinesh Tembo, 33 years old, already a billionaire and a household name across Africa. Born into privilege, raised by a former vice president, and refined by an Oxford education, he now led a fintech empire worth billions. To the world, he was success defined, admired, followed, envied. But under the polished shoes and custom suits, Tinesh carried a quiet void. Love to him was a contract. Culture, a museum piece. Philanthropy, a strategic tax shield. And though his calendar was full, his heart remained empty. On the evening of the Great Gala, the city's most prestigious event, hosted by Tinesh himself, the high and mighty gathered to celebrate his empire. Cameras flashed, politicians smiled, and Tinesh raised a toast to his own legend. Then, just as the violins reached their crescendo, the ballroom went dark. A blackout swept the hall. And through the confusion, his personal assistant whispered a line that silenced the night. "Sir, your mother has collapsed." That morning, the skies had foreshadowed the unraveling. Heavy clouds formed as Tinesh's convoy approached the city. Traffic snarled the roads. Choosing a detour through the old neighborhood of Kalingalinga, he gazed through rain-streaked windows until something made him pause. Amid the downpour, he saw a barefoot girl, shielding a young boy beneath a fraying straw mat. She couldn't have been more than 19. Her clothes were soaked and torn, her feet pressed into the mud. But her posture held pride, and her gaze was unwavering. She approached his vehicle. In her hand, roasted maize an offering. A gesture of humility wrapped in dignity. When Tinesh reached into his wallet, she stepped back, her voice steady and clear. "Money doesn't buy honor," she said. Tinesh froze. In that one sentence, she stripped away his empire, his ego, his armor. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without fear, without flattery. That night, though surrounded by ministers and moguls, his mind was far from the gala. He couldn't stop seeing her face, the firewood smoke on her fingers, the resolve in her voice. And when the news of his mother's collapse reached him, the two moments, the girl in the storm and the woman in the hospital, collided. At the hospital, the machines hummed as doctors worked in quiet urgency. Tinesh sat beside his mother as her breath slowed. Her hand found his. Her lips moved once. A single word, Mabanga. He knew that name, from somewhere deep buried. In childhood, it was not recorded in their family tree, not mentioned in memoirs or media, but it lived in the quiet spaces of memory. That night, Tinesh returned home not as the mogul everyone admired, but as a man shaken by a whisper. The next morning, the city buzzed with gossip, the gala blackout, the sudden death. Speculations filled newsstands. But Tinesh ignored it all. He shut himself inside his study and began to dig. Old photographs, yellow ledgers, forgotten maps. In the attic of his family's estate, he found a file marked with his father's initials. Inside, a land deed dated 1964 days before Zambia's independence. One side bore his father's signature, the other, J. Mabanga. His pulse quickened. The land in question? A fertile stretch in Copperbelt Province, rich in cobalt, eyed now by foreign investors for a massive mining project. But the local tribal elders had been protesting for years, claiming the land was stolen under false pretenses. The same village, the same region. Chanda's home. He returned to Kalingalinga, but the market stall was empty. She was gone. Through whispers and small bribes, he traced her to a hidden community center. She was teaching poetry to street children. She saw him. She didn't smile. He said, "I need to talk." She replied, "About honor, or money." They ate together. In silence, over nshima and beans, Chanda told her story. Her grandfather was a tribal historian. Her mother, a folk singer who sang in court to defend their ancestral land. She was killed in a so-called market accident 10 years ago. Since then, Chanda had memorized the songs, carried the history in her throat. She told him of the Ngoma festival. Once every 10 years, under tribal law, oral testimony could be submitted as legal evidence. The next one was 3 weeks away. Then came the revelation. The minister pushing the mining deal was Tinash's godfather, Minister Luyando. Tinash confronted him. Luyando was all charm and Polish, but his words were ice. "This is progress." He said, "Let the past die." But the past had already returned. Tinash began reading again, studying tribal law, learning the meaning of what his family had taken. With Chanda, he traveled to Machinga. They had 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare songs, stories, testimonies, to awaken truth. But truth brings enemies. Their car was ambushed after a visit to a village elder. Rocks shattered windows. Men in masks gave chase. Chanda led Tinash through forest trails, feet bare, lungs burning. And in that moment, he saw her not as a girl from the roadside, but as a guardian of memory. In Machinga, they were greeted with doubt. The elders remembered Chanda's family, but not Tinash's intentions. He stood before them, not as a CEO, but as a son of the land. He offered to fund cultural revival, not extraction. To protect, not profit. But the chief elder said, "Words or win, show us your loyalty." Then the blow came. News spread. His company's shares were crashing. Investors fled. Board members revolted. Overnight, he lost control. But Tinash stood firm. "Let the empire burn," he told Chanda. "If I can restore 1 acre of truth, it's worth it." The Ngoma festival began. Fires lit the night. Drums echoed through the hills. Chanda wore her mother's beads. Her voice soared. She sang the stories of generations silent. Elders nodded. Witnesses wept. Then Tinash stepped forward. He didn't beg. He read a letter, his mother's final confession. A legacy of guilt. A plea for redemption. "Let my son be the one to undo what our family began." The crowd held its breath. Minister Luyando arrived with police. He declared the gathering illegal, cited unity laws, ordered Chanda's arrest. Tinash stood between them. "If justice needs a prisoner," he said, "take me." The elders formed a wall. Cameras captured the moment. The footage went viral. By morning, protests swelled. Across Lusaka, Chanda's song was sung in streets. The story swept through every screen. The Council of Elders ruled in her favor. The land deed was declared fraudulent. Over 2,000 hectares returned to their rightful stewards. Foreign investors expelled. With what remained of his fortune, Tinash established the Tembo Mabanga Trust, co-led by Chanda, a foundation for culture, land, and legacy. They moved to the village, lived simply, planted trees, taught children. One night, beneath a baobab tree, Chanda asked him, "Do you miss the old life?" He smiled. "Not for a second. This ... is the first thing that feels truly mine." They married under the reed shelter where they first met. No diamonds, just a bead from her mother's necklace. The wedding was not broadcast. It was tribal, ancestral, pure. Their vows were simple, to never forget where they came from or why. They chose to rise. Years passed. The trust built schools, preserved languages, restored rivers. Chanda became a national voice. Tinash redefined what it meant to be rich. When a journalist asked him, "What was your greatest investment?" he answered, "The day I stopped measuring returns in currency." At a national celebration, Chanda performed. Her voice, now legend, her feet still bare. And in the crowd, among those who once doubted him, a man whispered, "She gave us more than a song. She gave us back our story." As the sun set behind the hills of Machinga, Tinash and Chanda sat with their children, telling them how it all began, not with wealth, not with power, but with a girl who offered maize, and a man who finally listened. And in the land of their ancestors, beneath the stars they knew, they had it all because they had found what truly mattered.